This is Lisa Giddings, and I'm going to talk to you today about coaching and disciplining staff and successful management. Creating a harmonious work environment is not only possible, it is essential for growth and improvement over time. It is important to coach employees in a way that allows for personal and individual competence and confidence. Allowing individuals to develop ideas and identify their own needs translates into future success when problems arise. At the end of this presentation, I anticipate that viewers will be able to articulate at least 3 key features of effective communication for improved coaching skills. Additionally, I expect people to be able to understand the steps to be taken if disciplining a staff member becomes necessary. When properly utilized, your communication skills can increase staff's ability to effectively improve their communication and coaching of patients, students, and fellow support staff, thereby improving the quality and function of the organization. Effective communication is a powerful tool in navigating challenging situations. It allows one to garner respect and attention while avoiding threatening and punitive alternatives. Excellent communication is more than speaking. It involves the way we conduct ourselves, our facial expressions, how we deal with conflict, what we do, and where we do it. Our nonverbal communication is as important as what we say, and when used properly, avoid sending an inconsistent message. Effective coaching can help us avoid the need for discipline, yet discipline can also be an effective tool for organizational success. Listening is one key feature of communication. When we listen to what is said with purpose and intention, we begin to understand the reason for what happens and why. From this initial first step, it is possible to develop appropriate strategies for continued necessary changes in behavior. When we actively listen, it can often provide an easy roadmap to a solution. Watch out for those verbal cues as well. For example, a person with their arms crossed and toes pointed away from you is saying, "This is not a good time for you to make a lasting impression." Perhaps choosing another time to meet is in order during those times. Additionally, we must be aware of our own body language. While some parts of this are not easy to control, practicing ahead of time can improve our performance. Avoid language as well as body language that sends a message that it is my way or the highway. There are occasions when that is appropriate, but in most coaching sessions, a collaborative and encouraging atmosphere will be most effective. Developing a rapport and earning the respect of the staff is another key feature of coaching and communicating. Having a relationship with staff means getting to know them on a more personal level. While it's not recommended that you be excessively involved in the private matters of everyone's life, it is important to understand the factors that may affect behavior. Perhaps a nurse is dealing with a dying parent and needs to be available during certain hours of the day for that parent. Being aware of the staff member's needs lets managers evaluate and utilize the time and skill of the nurse to the maximum potential, while promoting trust and respect of the staff member as well. Offering encouragement is another key feature of coaching and communicating. It is always easier to hand over a solution or answer that you want to hear from someone, but it is more effective to offer encouragement and positive reinforcement when the person recognizes the answer on their own. This can be done in different ways, but one approach is to ask questions until you hear the basic underpinnings of the solution. By verbal support, coupled with facial expression and some uncomfortable silence, we can usually get the coachee to come up with the correct response, even when we need to fill in some blanks here and there. Allowing the staff members to develop the plan for change is telling them that you believe they are competent and capable. That message helps the staff member make wise decisions in the future and focusing on improved quality of care. Limiting distractions is another key feature of coaching and effective communication. By setting a time to meet and offering a brief agenda, it allows both you and the coachee to plan and evaluate your comments and responses. Finding a quiet time before or after work and finding a place where you will not be interrupted will send the message that the topic is of significant importance and worthy of some thought and planning. For example, if coaching is needed regarding the inappropriate personal use of telephone time in the unit, say to the coachee, "Let's meet in room C for 20 minutes before work tomorrow. We should go over some success goals outlined in the employee handbook." This will let the employee know that reviewing the employee handbook tonight will be important and may even identify the issue on their own. Asking questions to elicit the right response is another feature of coaching. And unless you want to isolate and humiliate your coachee, don't ask them questions like, "Do you know what you're doing wrong?" When you want to hear a solution to a specific problem, ask the question that will help the person get to the answer, such as, In an effort to be a more effective team member, what can we do to improve the quality of patient care and staff support? This conveys two messages. The first being that we are a team in completing work and meeting the needs of our patients, and the second being that we are responsible for quality care and staff support. Enforcing the rules is never as effective as encouraging the commitment of the staff member. Making coachees feel valued and appreciated will ultimately be the best message you can send. By letting staff know that they are capable and qualified to find solutions independently, you let them take ownership of their own behavior. By having frequent and ongoing meeting times with staff, you develop a rapport while also giving yourself the opportunity to use the recognition of positive reinforcement for continued growth. Meeting with staff frequently, one-on-one, also translates into a smooth transition into disciplining staff should that become necessary. Much like a family, staff needs to feel connected in a way that gives them ownership and confidence. Most often, this will help avoid the uncomfortable need to discipline staff. Disciplining staff is not comfortable for most people. If done correctly, however, one can meet the needs of the organization and identify staff members that are not properly placed. It must first be understood that termination will be the ultimate outcome should a staff member be unable to adjust to the organization's expectations for both performance and behavior. Having frequent coaching meetings with staff members is often the best way to provide information about expectations. Yet there are those times when coaching is not working and a change must be made. Before considering termination, all other avenues should be exhausted, not only in consideration of the employee, but also because of the cost to others. Recruiting a new employee, the repetition of the training process, and the occasional negative repercussions of a dismissed employee can all cause stress and strain on the organization, other staff members, and yourself. Progressive discipline is most widely accepted as the basic form of staff discipline. It will ultimately safeguard both you and the organization should an employee become disgruntled, unruly, or aggressive. Progressive discipline involves well-laid groundwork. Regular evaluation with clearly defined goals and expectations will help you and the organization avoid legal battles and prolong dissatisfaction with the functioning of an employee. During each evaluation session from the first day, specific goals and outcomes should be identified and clearly stated in the conclusion of the written evaluation. A copy of the evaluation should be given to the employee, and a signed copy must remain in the employee file. Softening an evaluation to relieve your discomfort with discipline will only cause you trouble later on, so be candid and realistic. The steps to progressive discipline are coaching, verbal warning, written warning, and termination. Having covered coaching, we'll move on to verbal warnings. It is important to be certain that the coaching has been consistent and documented while being proportionate to the behavior and/or consistent with expectations of the organization. Verbal warning is actually a written warning without the signature. You must document that the employee has been given a verbal warning, but do not need to obtain the employee's signature recognizing the issue. It is important to let the employee know that the behavior or action will lead to termination if it cannot be resolved within an established timeline. Human resources must be notified if a verbal warning is given. They can help you with suggestions and actions that will be defensible and credible if legal problems develop. Keep a written record with the established timeline for expected behavior changes to occur. Plan a follow-up meeting to evaluate the effectiveness of the warning and whether or not the appropriate changes have been made by the employee. When several coaching sessions have been done and 2 to 3 verbal warnings have been given, a written warning will become necessary. A written warning indicates a serious consideration of employment termination and should be handled as such. Everything done prior to this should be well documented and flawedly written to reflect the expectations of the organization and not simply a reflection of our own personal opinions. In other words, it's not done in isolation. Human resources should be very much a part of the process, and often the organization's attorney will review your documentation with you in order to determine the best move going forward. As in the verbal warning, a written warning must lay out a timeline for improvement using language that clearly states the expectation of the organization, and if possible, it should be tied to the organization's documentation. For example, it is stated in the expectations of LGH that each employee be on the unit no less than 5 minutes before shift change and must stay until the staff of the next shift has been clearly given the account of the current shift's care and evaluation information. Additionally, what will happen next must be clearly stated along with a statement about what and when further disciplinary action will occur. For example, by the 3rd of June, DS will be reporting to work and staying as noted in the company guidelines in order to avoid termination, as determined through electronically documented time records. The documentation must now include a place for employee signature, and should the employee refuse to sign, this should be noted on the document along with the time and the date of the session. A separate action plan may also be used in the event of multiple offenses. During the time between written notices, coaching and encouraging should continue if at all possible. Coaching sessions should be documented and evaluated for understanding by the employee. A second written warning may be given should progress be made. In a second written warning, it should be noted that this is the final warning and the expectation should be tied to a specific date and time. For example, on July 10th, the DS will be at work by 06:55, and if he or she is late, their employment will be terminated. If no progress is made, termination may be the only course of action.
I don't need your help! Get out of my room! Get out of my room! I said get out of my room! Shut up! What's wrong? Go on break. Okay. I got you. We'll leave you be now, okay? We don't change your dressing right now. Move this stuff away from you.
Last night on a neurological unit, a young head injury patient was acting extremely belligerent and vulgar. This particular patient has a history of mood lability and cycles between rational behavior and aggressive acting out. Her behavior has become so problematic, however, that one of her neurosurgeons had previously threatened to wash her mouth out with soap. Nurse Caldwell and Nurse Jones were the nurses working the night shift on the unit, with Nurse Caldwell acting as the patient's primary nurse.
Hey, Nurse Jones.
Hi, you supervisor tonight?
I am now supervisor tonight, so how's the shift going so far?
It's been a little rough. The patient in room 2 has been very aggressive again and been yelling. His nurse, Nurse Caldwell, got upset and taped the patient's mouth shut. I took the tape off, sent her to break to cool off, but I really felt that somebody should know. I don't really want her to get in trouble, but my conscience thinks I should tell you, so I was letting you know this is what happened. But everything's been calm since then.
I'll come by throughout the shift to kind of check on things and just let me know how that patient is progressing and how Nurse Caldwell's behavior has been.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Morning.
Hi. How was your guys' shift? It was good. Nothing out of the ordinary. Patient room 2 was aggressive like she has been, but nothing out of the ordinary. Nobody had any major changes. It's just a night here on the shift.
Okay, well, you guys have a good night.
Thanks.
Good morning.
After handoff report, the nurse supervisor visits the unit.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning, Nurse Morris. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just kind of curious if you've already gotten your report from the morning from the night shift.
Yeah, they came and talked to me. They said the patient in room 2 was a little aggressive, but they were able to calm her down, and then that was it. There were no major issues.
Oh, so they didn't elaborate on the situation?
No.
All right, well, I feel like you need to know this. So last night when I was making my rounds, I came in and I noticed that Nurse Caldwell was on coffee break and Nurse Jones was left in the unit with 2 LVNs. So Nurse Jones told me that Nurse Caldwell became very upset with the patient in bed 2. I guess she was abusive and vulgar towards her, and she proceeded to tape her mouth shut with a 4-inch piece of tape last night. Oh my goodness. Nurse Jones came back in, removed the tape, sent Nurse Caldwell on a coffee break. When we discussed it, everything was being handled. I came by the unit several other times. Nothing else seemed to really be remiss. But Nurse Jones seemed to be reluctant to report this to her supervisors. I take it.
No, yeah.
So I think you need to follow up on this. Why don't you call the physician and then let me know what else happened.
Okay, it's definitely, thank you very much for sharing
All right.
that with me.
The nurse manager calls the patient's attending MD. The attending does not believe that any harm was done and agrees that it is up to the nurse manager whether to discipline the employee and to what degree. However, the attending believes that most of the medical staff would want the nurse fired. The nurse manager calls a meeting with the members of the nursing board.
Hi, I just came to talk to you guys because I actually had an incident on my shift. One of my nurses was dealing with one of our patients, a neurological patient that was being belligerent and saying obscenities, and she got frustrated and taped the patient's mouth shut. So the house supervisor came and told me this, and as soon as I found out, I wanted to come and talk to you guys to figure out what I should do. The situation is Nurse Caldwell has actually been an excellent nurse. She is judgmental sometimes, but other than that, she's great. She's also very religious, and she's also very sheltered. And I understand that taping a patient's mouth shut with 4x4 tape is very dangerous, especially when they have a chest injury, abdominal injury, and also a neurological injury. So I know that is a big deal. But Nurse Caldwell actually has never been reprimanded before. We've never had any issues with you. So I just wanted to come and talk to you and see what are my options and what should I do.
Okay, well, based on what you've told us, there are 4 different options that we can take. So option 1 would be firing Nurse Caldwell. The pros to this is it puts a fast end to the conflict, and it increases the patient's safety because you know she wouldn't be on the unit to do that action anymore. But the con would be that it doesn't solve the overall conflict of the situation. Option 2 would be do nothing and take no action. The pros to this would be there would be no conflict and you wouldn't have to deal with it. But the cons would be you're enabling the behavior and allowing and accepting this behavior to continue on your unit.
Or we could suspend Nurse Caldwell for 30 days for an anger management program. Then when she returns, we could send her to a lower acuity unit and have her under direct supervision of a charge nurse until we feel she can work independently again. However, since this was quite an offense, if it were to happen again, then we would have to permanently terminate her. There are a couple of pros to the solution. It is a workable solution for all, and she would also be able to work and maintain her income. Or we could reassign Nurse Caldwell to a unit altogether and avoid her being on the neurological unit. The pro to this would be that she doesn't have to lose her job, but then the con would be that we would be putting patients on a different unit at risk for abuse. So based off of these 4 options, we feel that you being the charge nurse would be the best to make the decision.
Okay, well thank you guys so much for discussing these options with me. I will be calling Nurse Caldwell in and I will deal with the situation. Thank you so much.
The nurse manager calls Nurse Caldwell in for a meeting.
I know I lost control. Please don't fire me. I know it's bad. Please don't fire me.
Okay, Nurse Caldwell, I need you to take a breath. Please breathe. Please breathe. You're right. What you did was unacceptable. And because of this, I went and talked to the board of the hospital, and they gave me some options of what I can do. So, considering the choice that I made, I came to this decision because this is your first incident, and before this, you have been a great nurse and practiced good judgment. So, the decision I've made is you're going to be suspended for 30 days where you will attend anger management classes, and when you return, you're going to be reassigned to a lower acuity unit and under the supervision of another RN for 3 months. And if in that time another incident does occur, you will be terminated. So, do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to take the time to go to your anger management classes. When you come back, you're going to be refreshed and work on this lower acuity unit, and everything's going to be fine, okay? Okay.
Termination is not so much a reflection of the employee's commitment to the position or ability to function as it is a failure of the coaching and disciplinary actions to that point. So it's imperative that all of those measured be pursued with purpose and commitment by the coach. It is the coach's responsibility to exhaust every avenue to encourage success at goal setting, implementation, and evaluation. The actual termination should be planned and well documented. All documents must be prepared ahead of time, be brief and to the point, reiterating only what is on the documents. Have the employee sign the documents and then stand to indicate that the meeting is over. Do not belabor the point or make any apologies. Some institutions might also require that you have a witness in the room, such as a hospital administrator or an attorney. There are times when the actions of an employee are so egregious that termination is the only natural first step, like we saw in that video. Some would consider that to be too egregious to continue their employment. These may also include workplace violence, stealing medication, intimidating patients, intentional destruction of property, and so on. If such offenses are not already properly indicated in the employee handbook, it is a good thing to consider putting them there. If they are, it would be best to send the employee home, meet with the human resources officer or the organization's attorney, and determine the best path forward. The goal is to avoid backlash on the organization. The employee can be called back in to have a termination meeting at a later date. In the event of illegal activity, proper authorities must also be notified. In the event that the offense was reported by another employee, take the complaint seriously, gather all necessary documentation related to the offense, and once again, consult with the organization's human resources and an attorney. Make certain all appropriate steps are taken to avoid an opportunity for the nurse or staff member to respond. It is important to view discipline as an approach to learning, teaching, and growing. It helps us to work within the parameters of the rules and regulations of the institution and is not meant to degrade or humiliate. Use disciplinary measures with restraint, maintain fairness and privacy, and always keep the door open for employees seeking to improve or change their specific actions.